How would you react if an entity in a ragged Easter Bunny costume appeared in your bedroom? This is my true terrifying story. But before we begin, if you love eerie tales inspired by true events or real places, told by firelight, and if you want to show that you still believe in the Easter Bunny, hit like and subscribe. When my kids asked me about paranormal experiences I'd had throughout my life, I hesitated for a moment. I've had brushes with the inexplicable doors that open by themselves, unexplainable cold drafts, things that go bump in the night. But those were the usual kinds of eerie stories people share. Things that made your skin crawl but still fell into a realm of relatable weirdness. But there was one experience that stood apart from the rest, something that has haunted me for years. I've never heard of anyone else going through anything remotely similar. Even now, decades later, I struggle to say it out loud. That evening, though, my kids' curious faces were enough to nudge me past my reluctance. I sighed, leaned back on the couch, and started recounting the memory, one I'd worked so hard to bury deep in my mind. I was 5 or 6 years old at the time, and we lived in a modest suburban home in Sydney, Australia. The house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, surrounded by towering eucalyptus trees that cast eerie shadows at night. The chirping of cicadas was the soundtrack of most evenings back then, but as the seasons shifted to autumn, the nights became quieter, colder, and somehow heavier. It wasn't Easter or anywhere near the season for chocolate eggs and egg hunts. It was just a regular evening, crisp and ordinary. I was lying on the floor of my bedroom, with my Matchbox toy cars and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figurines. My room was cozy but simple, with pale blue walls and a bed topped by a quilt my grandmother had made. A small Sony AM/FM radio sat on the bedside table, its antenna slightly bent from years of accidental bumps. At first, it seemed like any other night, but then the air around me seemed to shift. It grew oppressive, almost suffocating. My chest tightened, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Even at that young age, I knew this wasn't normal. It wasn't just a figment of my imagination. And then it happened. The small radio on my bedside table crackled to life. At first, I was startled, but thought perhaps I had accidentally hit the power switch earlier without realizing it. But the volume was much louder than I ever set it, filling the room with sharp, dissonant clarity, and the song it played sent an icy chill down my spine. "Somebody's Watching Me" by Rockwell. I froze. The lyrics felt like they were mocking me, taunting me as if the universe itself had conspired to confirm my fear. I stared at the radio, paralyzed by the eerie coincidences. My little heart pounded in my chest, faster than it had ever beaten before. Then, almost instinctively, my gaze shifted to the doorway, and that's when I saw it. Standing in the dim light of the hallway was a figure. At first, I thought it was a person, a man maybe, but something about its outline was wrong. It looked like someone wearing an old, moth-eaten Easter Bunny costume. The fur was grimy and discolored, the kind of white that had been tarnished into a sickly yellow-gray hue. The ears drooped unnaturally, sagging like they carried an unseen weight. And then there were the eyes. They weren't cartoonish or friendly, like you'd expect on a costume meant for children. They were dark, empty hollows, yet somehow they seemed alive, focused, piercing, and locked on me. It didn't move at first. It simply stood there, filling the doorway, its lifeless gaze boring into me. I was utterly frozen, every muscle in my body refusing to obey the silent screams in my mind. I wanted to cry out for my parents, but I couldn't. My voice was gone, swallowed by the sheer weight of terror. The radio kept playing, the lyrics echoing cruelly. I always feel like someone is watching me. As if the figure knew it had rooted itself into my mind forever, it turned. Its movements were slow, deliberate, almost mechanical. It didn't leave the room so much as drift away, its departure silent and surreal. When it was finally out of sight, the radio clicked off, plunging the room into an all-encompassing silence. My parents found me curled into a ball, yelling and sobbing uncontrollably. They searched the house, checked the locks, even called the police. But there was no sign of an intruder, no footprints, no radio left on. They told me it was a nightmare, but I knew what I saw. Years passed, and I carried that memory with me like a dark secret. I tried to convince myself it was a dream, an overactive imagination playing tricks on a child's mind. But deep down, I knew the truth. I'd been awake. The details were too vivid, too precise to be a mere figment of my imagination. The strange thing is, it wasn't just the event itself that haunted me. It was its aftermath. Since that night, I've never been able to look at an Easter bunny the same way. What was once a harmless symbol of joy and celebration became a harbinger of dread. Every advertisement, every photo, every costume, no matter how cheerful or vibrant, would send a shiver down my spine and transport me back to that night. Even walking past the seasonal aisles and stores around Easter would leave me uneasy, my stomach tightening with an unshakable sense of doom. And the song, that bloody song, every time I hear, "Somebody's watching me," it's like a portal opens, dragging me back into that room, into that suffocating silence and relentless fear. I've tried to avoid it, but the tune is everywhere, popping up in random playlists or commercials without warning. When I finished telling my kids the story, their faces were a mix of fascination and fear. I tried to play it off as a silly childhood memory, something that couldn't possibly hurt me or them. But even as I said the words, I didn't quite believe them myself. Some nights, when the house is quiet and the air feels too still, I find myself glancing at the doorway, half expecting to see those hollow eyes and drooping ears standing there again. I'm not sure what it was I saw that night. A restless spirit, sleep paralysis, or something else entirely. But one thing I do know is this. Some things never truly leave us. They linger, not just in the corners of our memories, but in the shadows of our everyday lives, hiding in plain sight, waiting for a moment to remind us of their presence. Like the lyrics of that damn song that I can never erase from my head. Did you like that story? Can spirits or demons really possess holiday costumes? Please hit like and tell me what you think in the comment. I don't know about you, but the next time I see a man in an Easter bunny costume, I'm walking the other way. This is a fictional, dramatized story inspired by a true event.